Hello everyone and welcome back to my podcast channel. This is Anne and this is a podcast in which I talk about my knitting and spinning, books and cross stitch and just sort of crafty things. I'm actually thinking about changing my channel name to encompass kind of a crafty vibe because the one that I have on YouTube, this I find an ironic thing. There are several people who go under Ann P, and apparently they do a lot of makeup tutorials, which is pretty much the antithesis of my normal prep for the day. So I'm thinking I may wish to distinguish myself from that a little bit, but I haven't decided on a name yet. Oops, sorry, I'm trying to adjust my camera. Anyway, let me know what y'all think of that. It would be something kind of more generic, not super specific, like just for knitting or just for my name, something about crafts, since that's basically what I talk about here along with my books. So today is Sunday, the 31st of March, 2019. I hope everybody's doing well. So quick life update first. In the way of things here in the mountains in New Mexico in late March, I had a high pollen alert pop up on my weather alerts. At the same time, it's currently snowing, so hasn't really figured out if it's winter or spring here yet. I think we're somewhere in between, but yeah, the pollen is definitely going crazy this year. We had, for us, a wet winter, and as a result, now that we have had some warm days, the trees are just going nuts. Yesterday, I did some outdoor things. I have a flower bed out front by our driveway, and that I cleaned up kind of the leaf litter and tidied stuff up for new growth, which has already started. And I did some repotting. You can see behind me this plant right here is a new addition to the filming area. This little guy was given to me by my friend Margie. It's been like 6 years now. It's a little bonsai. It's a ficus that's a bonsai. And she had sent it to me as a sort of memorial gift when my horse Ben had to be put down. And it was getting to the point, I know bonsai are supposed to be root bound, but it was ready to expand. And we had a much larger ficus when we lived in Utah that I loved, that it was actually so big we couldn't move it. It conveyed with the house. So anyway, I put this ficus in a new planter that did not have anything in it, and I repotted a few other things, kind of moved things around, and moved this really gorgeous little cactus garden that my husband and I got on our trip to Tucson last weekend into a sunnier spot out in the other room. So did have a really nice visit in Tucson for a long weekend. The weather was gorgeous. I highly recommend it. We did a great, it was just under 6 mile hike through Saguaro National Forest. We went to the Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum, which is excellent. We really, really enjoyed that. We rented a house while we were there, which we tried to do if we can because I have a lot of stuff I can't eat out. And so it's just easier for me to cook in, and we can kind of linger over coffee in our PJs that way. So that was really nice. In general, we had a blast. I would not go to Tucson in the middle of the summer, but late March, perfect. It was in the 70s, gorgeous sunny days, definitely sunblock and a hat kind of weather, but nice and dry. We were able to get out and do a lot of stuff. I'm just going to have like a little public service announcement here, and then we'll move on with the rest of things, because I know y'all are not really here to listen to me talk about random stuff, but we took our dog with us, which is no problem. We checked it out with the place we rented from, paid the pet deposit. She's 4, just turned 4. She's a yellow lab. She has not one malicious bone in her body. She might lick you to death, but she generally loves people. She likes other dogs. She likes other animals. She's not aggressive in any way, shape, or form. She'll bark if someone comes to the house, but she is letting me know they're there, and if I tell her it's okay, then she immediately welcomes whoever into the house. She's not like a guard dog. So anyway, the place that we rented, the third morning we were there, my husband, luckily it was my husband, took her out on her leash, and she's a good sized dog, she's 65 pounds and she's very fit. And he walked up this pathway, and where we were staying was a whole bunch of like townhouse kind of things, and they have a bike path and lots of places you can go run, and they have a swimming pool for members, and they have basketball courts and tennis courts, and those are kind of up on a ridge behind where our rental place was. And so he had walked her up there to take her morning jaunt. And as he walked past the basketball courts, which are chain link fenced in, there was a guy in there with 2 dogs, large dogs, and definitely had some pit bull in them. And I don't have a problem with pit bulls. I know many people who have them as pets, and they're lovely animals, and I'm not singling them out. This could have been any breed dog. It happened to be those. So large size dogs. And as they walked past on the trail with our dog on her leash, these dogs were going nuts against the chain link fence, like growling and like leaping against them. And the guy who was in there with them obviously did not have them, under control. He was telling them to stop and they wouldn't, and he was calling them off and they wouldn't come. So my husband was like, whew, they're behind the chain link fence. So he walked on about another 500 feet, 600 feet. And I have no idea what possessed this guy to do this, but he opened the gate to the basketball court where he and his dogs were in without putting them on a leash. And my husband had kind of turned a corner, and all of a sudden he hears this guy yell, "Oh shit!" And these 2 dogs came after my husband and our dog, and my husband is 6 feet tall, and he's not somebody who backs down from stuff. I mean, he's a defenseman in hockey. He knows how to kind of take care of himself. Not that he's in like bar brawls all the time or whatever, but you know what I mean. He's not somebody who, like, if those dogs had come at me, I probably would have been in a fetal position and would still be there. So anyway, the 2 dogs actually came at him, and one of them actually bit our dog in the face. She was trying to get behind my husband, and he's yelling and he's kicking at these dogs. He actually kicked one in the chest and knocked it over, and it got back up and came for him again, with its teeth bared and growling, and the other dog was kind of circling around behind them. And my husband is having all of these things go through his head where he's just like, he was afraid if he dropped our dog's leash to like let her be free, that those 2 dogs would chase her down and do even more damage to her. And he didn't, at the same time, you don't want to put yourself in the middle of 2 dogs who are attacking your dog. That's not sensible, even though that's probably what we all would do. Anyway, this guy came running up finally and dragged these dogs off of my husband physically, and was trying to control them on their leashes. And my husband said, I completely lost my temper. With this guy. And I thought to myself, I'm actually surprised that he didn't lose it more than he did, that he was just yelling some bad names at this guy. Our dog got bitten here on what would be like her cheekbone. She had a gash underneath her eye that we wound up having to kind of keep an eye on because it kept bleeding. Those dogs could have taken her eye out. Those dogs could have bitten my husband. And I said to him when we got back, well, what if we had had a kid? What if we had had our 5 or 6-year-old with us? That would, they were going along the path and kind of skipping along, and those 2 dogs charged at you. So, public service announcement, because that kind of soured what was otherwise a really, really good experience. If you have any questions, if your dog is somewhat unpredictable around other dogs or humans, it is not mean to the dog for you to keep it on a leash, okay? Just do that. It's mean to the dogs that they might bite. It's certainly mean to the humans. You know, that could have been such a horrible, horrible incident, and even worse than it was. I have no idea what this guy was thinking. Yes, he apologized, but, you know, I mean, his dogs attacked our dog for no reason. She was walking on her leash at heel with my husband on a path, not at their house, not trying to come into their space. They chased her down. And I feel awful for her because, I mean, she obviously was absolutely terrified. And, you know, like I said, she's not an aggressive dog. She probably would not have fought back, and it could have been so much worse. So anyway, 10 minutes in, PSA, I'm off my soapbox. I love dogs. If you're not 110% yours is under control, please keep them on a leash, okay? Next, let's move on. Let's talk all kinds of crafty things. So I'm going to have a fairly short knitting and spinning segment today. I am still spinning the same thing I've been spinning since January. I'm hoping I might finish those singles today, so maybe the next time I talk to you, they will be finished and plied, and I will have a yarn to show you. But for now, that's as good as it gets. So I'm just going to kind of combine that in with my knitting segment, because I think if you're here for spinning, you're probably interested in knitting too. Next, I wanted to share with you a new release. This is the vest pattern that I released for the spring equinox as part of the Celtic collection that I'm doing that are garments. So this is a Stara. It's a lady's vest. It's knit with fennel yarn, but you could use any fingering weight yarn. And it has a iris pattern down at the hem. Here's the bottom hem. And then it's got this repeating smaller Piri pattern in the rest of the body. V-neck, and it is steeked. The armholes are steeked, meaning it's knit in the round the whole way up, and then the armholes are cut open, as is the V-neck line, and then that's finished off using the just plain ribbing. So this is available. I will put a link down below. I am currently working on another deadline project, which I'm hoping to have done by April 21st. So I'm really, really focused on that. And that is another vest. It will be a men's vest, unisex vest this time. Also color work, also will have steeks. And that will be for the Festival of Beltane. That will be coming up May 1st. In other news, I got classes picked up for Stitches Midwest. Now, there is another Stitches event, which is in Atlanta, which is Stitches Atlanta United, I think they're calling it, or Stitches United Atlanta United, one of those. Anyway, Atlanta, mid-May. I will not be attending that one. My yarn will be there with the yarn guys, but I personally will not be there. I am, however, teaching classes at Stitches Midwest, which is August 1st through 4th, I believe are the dates. Outside of Chicago in Schaumburg, Illinois. There will be a brand new class that I'm teaching called No Yokes About It, that is about yoke construction, top-down sweaters. Should be a super fun class, lots of information in that one. And then I'm also teaching my Inspired Fair Isle class, where we talk about developing a Fair Isle color work palette to customize either an existing pattern that you might want to knit, or to develop your own to do something from start to finish. So links below to those classes. I also will, of course, be there in the Yarn Guys booth when I'm not teaching. So if you're in the area, and Laura at the corner of Knit and Tea, I hope that we can definitely hook up while we're there. It'd be great to actually meet you in person after all of our years of knowing each other. For those of you who don't know, Laura is my technical editor who irons out my somewhat questionable maths on my pattern drafts. So a fantastic knitter and an awesome all-around person. So anyway, that is what's happening this summer in the world of knitting. I do not have information yet about the Stitches Salt Lake. That would be in October, and I do not have information yet about, I think Stitches SoCal is November 1st. I still think they're doing that. I have to double check. But Stitches Salt Lake is the new one that will be happening, and I have submitted to teach there, but they won't let us know that for probably a couple months. So when I know something, you guys will know. Okay, let's move on to books. All right, I have done a lot of reading. Quick update, I am still listening to Green Rider by Kristen Britton. I said her last name wrong last time. I said England, which, yeah, it's part of Britain, but that's not this person's last name. I'm still listening to that on audiobook. I have about 2 hours left out of the 17 to finish that one up, so definitely finish that one. Forgot how much I love this book, and yeah, girl power, horsepower, fantasy world, all kinds of good characters in it. Love it. Okay, so full report on that one once I actually get it finished. Then I read for the Magical Stitches prompt of time travel, a book called The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell. So this is a fun one that has, it definitely has some magic set in it. It obviously has time travel in it since I read it for that prompt. Our heroine starts in contemporary New York City, and she jumps back through time into the early 20th century, like 1900, 1910, at the behest of this professor whom he found her as an orphan and raised her. And there are 5 magical items, or items that are imbued with magical strength, running back through time that he wants to get his hands on, and he's trained her up, and he sends her back through time to collect each of these items. So she's gotten those, and he sends her back to find this very important sort of instruction book. And while she's there, she gets stuck in the past, and the storylines from other jumps in time that she's made. She meets some of the people in an earlier time that she will meet in a later time. This sounds crazy and very convoluted, but it's not. It's a very well-written fantasy book. There's one thing that I really liked about it is that the author does a great job of creating the historical setting that was early 20th century New York, with references to Tammany Hall and the corrupt politics, and kind of as things are coming to a more industrial society, but then she manages to make the magic really fit into all of that. And I love the fact that it's very seamless. Characters are great. Our main character, I loved, she's contemporary, but there's some things we find out about her that are why she fits well into this older time. Some things that from her upbringing and her youth that she learned that allow her to assimilate a little more seamlessly into a past time. And then the other 2 kind of main characters, the boss who controls a whole bunch of minions and kind of runs part of the magical underworld, if you will, and then the other male character who has magic, but he keeps it hidden, and he works as an illusionist. So kind of an interesting juxtaposition of reality and magic in this one. It is the first in a series. I want to say at least 3 and possibly 4, maybe more. But really enjoyed that one. So if that's the type of genre you like, I'm guessing you would too. I then read Daughter of Smoke and Bone. by Lainey Taylor. This is the first in a trilogy, which is the prompt that I read it for in Magical Stitches. I had this one in my wish list for a while. I think on the recommendation of Jessie Marie, if I'm not mistaken. I'm kind of just following Jess around the internet right now, so yeah, if you feel that like cool breeze of stalkerness in a nice way, Jess, that's probably me. So Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Lainey Taylor. So this particular one is basically all fantasy. There is a young woman who she's an art student in Prague, and I love the fact that this author is not setting things in the US or in the UK. Not that I have problems with either of those locations, but a lot of books are set in those locations. So it was nice to have this someplace else, and it's a little exotic and a little foreign feeling, which is wonderful. The main character, who is the daughter of Smoke and Bone, to whom this refers to, she's an art student in Prague, but she has this rather different adoptive father. He's a chimera or chimera, depending, I guess, on how you want to pronounce that. But at any rate, he sends her out on, he's raised her since she was a little girl. Everyone who lives kind of in his world is one of these fantastical creatures that's half human, half something else, like half serpent, half lion, half human. And he's very secretive about the stuff that he does, but he sends her to through these sort of portals in the world where you open a door and you're someplace else, like New York or Paris or Alaska or wherever. And he sends her to collect things from merchants who work in the currency of teeth, like teeth. And she's not sure what they're for, but she goes and collects them, in jars or whatever from these people, and she brings them back to him, and he works some magic with them. So he provides her with some small magics, like she's gotten her hair to begin to grow out blue. That's one of her features. She doesn't have to dye it, it just grows blue. And he has these like magical doorways that he sends her through, and she can come back through to get to where he is, but she's not sure where they are in the world. Is it another dimension? Is it just some place that hasn't been found but is earthly? So that's how the story kicks off, and then into this come these three avenging angels, archangels, seraphim, and they are finding all of the door portals that she comes in and out through, and they are leaving a burnt handprint on each of them to mark them. And she's only kind of peripherally aware of these, and she's not sure what the meaning of it is. And so we find out through the book what the meaning of them is and why there is antagonism between the seraphim and the chimera, and how those two races have known each other and their back history and their backstory, and how our heroine fits into that. And she is an integral part of the story. Very cool details. Wonderful world building in this. The characters are great. You're invested with them very quickly. A little fun and a little funky, kind of, like I said, like a different vibe than some of the other things I've read, because it's set in like this exotic location, and she travels to a lot of exotic locations to pick up teeth for Brimstone, who's her guardian or her foster dad, whatever you want to call him. Had major issues with the ending, because it's bad enough when it's part of a trilogy and you can read the book and think, well, at least it ended okay. Anytime a book actually ends with "to be continued ... is going to send me over the edge. That part I didn't like. Everything else, great. Definitely a good read. If you could read all three of the trilogy at once, that would probably be the choice. if you have oodles of spare time. Anyway, so another really good read, one that I enjoyed quite a bit. One of the next prompts that was in the School of Magical Stitches in Literature to read was, and these are all extra credit books for this month and April, because of the Dementors in the Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry Potter, that we just finished reading, and their association with chocolate for your recovery. The prompt was to read something that was related to a bakery or chocolate. So I had a book pop up into my like freebie listserv that I get every morning, that the main character owned a bakery down in Florida, called Wish Upon a Shell by I think it's Carell is how she says her last name, but anyway, I'll put links down below to Goodreads. So this was a very formulaic, girl who's kind of down on her luck. She's scraped everything together. She's running this bakery. She has no time for a life. She meets this guy who's damaged in some way, who's come to this Florida island for a vacation, and they try to resist each other, and then they wind up together at the end. It is very Hallmark movie. If you like those kinds of books, this one's very sweet, and there isn't, it's definitely like PG rated. They hold hands and walk along the beach kind of romance. I just needed to read something to fulfill that prompt, and it was free, so I read it. Not one of my favorites, but again, if you love those kinds of sort of soft, easy romances that you already know that's going to have a happy ending when you start it, fantastic. And it's free currently on Amazon. I have just started reading a new book. I can't remember what the prompt for this one is. Doesn't matter. More Magical Stitches reading. It's called The Essex Serpent, which my dad just sent me, by Sarah Perry. So this book is written based on a couple of actual historical things. The first of which was a pamphlet that was written, it was either 1664 or 1669. I can't also remember that date. Anyway, called The Flying Serpent, or Strange News Out of Essex. And so this was talking about sightings along the coast of a creature very similar to the Loch Ness Monster, or what we think of as the Loch Ness Monster, that appeared in the mid-1600s. And then the same creature was sighted, or a similar creature was sighted off the coast in the 1890s after an earthquake, seen out like in the coastal waters. And there had been a small earthquake that, if you've read any of the other books about, there's one I read last year, I think it's called The Fossil Collector, but I'll put a link down below to the right title because I'm not going to dredge it up out of my memory this morning. But it's about Mary Ammond, who was one of the very first female, what we would consider paleontologists, but she was a fossil hunter. She lived on the coast, Lyme Regis, and that limestoney coast, where there's been tons of fossils found over the years, and parts of the cliff would shear away and they would find more fossils. Anyway, the setting of that book and the character of Mary Ammond feature prominently in this book. The heroine of this book, it's 1893. She's just lost her husband, who, from the history of the backstory, we find out that he was horrible and abusive. She's now widowed. He's passed away, and she loves all things to do with fossils and bones and rocks and geology and all of that. So she decides she's going to take her widow status off to the coast and do some fossil hunting, maybe meet Mary Ammond. That's one of her goals, or at least walk the area that Mary Ammond did. And she hears rumors that the Essex serpent has returned, and so she winds up going to stay at the seaside, and meets a local curate, and the two of them decide that they're going to investigate it. Really well written so far. I'm enjoying this quite a bit. It's a great historical fiction read. I'm not that far into it. You can see I've got quite a bit left to go, but I'll update you guys on this one once I finish it. I'm really, really enjoying that one. Okay, so let's move on to cross-stitching. I have a ton of stuff to talk about today, and it's all kind of higgledy-piggledy because when we were on vacation, I did not take my usual, like, really in-depth notes. I just marked down some things, and so y'all just know that everything that I've worked on has something to do with magical stitches, with the exception of Miss Oh-So Crafty's birthday sal, which I'll talk about kind of as we get to the end, because that just started on Friday. So let's see. Let's talk about the first thing that I've worked on, and I've worked on quite a bit this month, and that is my stitching shelf from Heaven and Earth Designs. This is just regular. It's not max color. It's not expanded. It's not any of those things. It's just the regular version. So what I've been trying to do with this piece is I've been trying to focus on it so every time I can use it for homework or extra credit, I do, and I still have one extra credit prompt for March, April that I will be using this for. But this right here is all I have left of this page, and I think it's page 3. So you might remember from my last couple of videos, I was talking about the fact that one of my goals was to do a half page every month on this so that I would have 6 pages finished by the end of the calendar year. And I had finished this top of this page when I talked to you guys last time, so that was my March goal. So I only have 500 stitches left, which are hidden here under the gazillion confetti threads. These 500 right here to finish this page in April. So I am super, super happy about my progress on that. Excuse me one second so I don't knock my tea over. Yeah, absolutely loving this. I think even though the confetti in this little trailing ivy just about killed me, I love it. I think it looks amazing. And this is one of those that's like, yeah, it's that big. So I'm going to continue working on this when I can. Definitely going to get those 500 stitches finished, since that'll be one of my homework things for the month of April. But know that you'll see this again, and then I'm going to work on it for whatever homework I can make it fit for in Magical Stitches. So since we don't know what those are yet, I can't tell you really how much other things I'll be working on. Then I also worked on this little guy, which is Christmas Tea by Brenda Gervais. And I've had a lot of folks who've asked me like who that is or what the designer is. If it will help you, I know that 123 Stitch had this, and yes, it is super cute. The number on the pattern is number CS198. So I don't know if that will help you find it, but that's the information I have. So Brenda Gervais, Christmas Tea. Copyright was 2016, so it's really not been that long ago. I am working this on a 32 count Belfast in Wren from Picture This Plus. And I had this done. Not much, I know. I got Miss Mouse's tail and most of her dress done. So that's this section right here. I think it was like 200 stitches we had to do. Now I'm doing this all in color and cotton threads, hand dyed overdyes. And I had some questions. Pomegranate is the red I'm using. And then for the mouse color, I'm using mushroom. And it looks browner here, I think, than it does on here. It looks grayer here. But this is the color I'm using for that. So, no specific plans on that. I use that for the divinations homework because it's the teacup. I'll work on that. It is one of my Make 6 challenges, but I think it's a fairly quick stitch. So I'll work on that when I can, when and as I can, you know, to fit it into homework until I get to the point that I want to push through and finish it. I think I also have it slated for one of the ultimate challenges. That's 1,000 stitches, so that should get me pretty close on that one too, to getting it done this year. Excuse me. Okay, not a ton of stitches on this one, but I did also work on this for one of the extra credit prompts, stitch something that's somewhere in the world, not where you live. So I'm doing Mill Hill's Scotland Santa from their Celtic Santas collection. And I just had like part of his hat done because I had started this in December. So that's where I am on that. I have, I think, 350 more stitches or something on that. So this is, you'll see this again this month because I want to get those 500 stitches put in. Probably going to be a travel project. So there's that one. And then I put in quite a bit of stitches on my Village of Hawk Run Hollow. I used it for some homework and some extra credit. Here's what it will look like finished. And you might remember this is the one that I'm doing some personalization to. So I'm really happy to say that I got block 4, which is the boarding house, finished. That block and block 5 are on my Make 9 challenge list. So I've got block 4 done and I started block 5, which is one of the faster blocks because it's got a lot of words in it. So stitching this with the DMC on 22 count heart hanger in the colorway Legacy, I believe it is, from Picture This Plus. So there's where I am on that one. And there's the 2 blocks I worked on this time. And so this will come out again, I think, possibly. This will possibly come out this month. I finished the extra credit I wanted to use it for. I may use it for other homework if I can, but then I've got ultimate challenge points that I want to use that for. Let's see, what else do I need to talk about? Okay, so then let's kind of move on to things that I'm working on that I'm using for Magical Stitches and for Stephanie, Ms. Oh So Crafty's birthday sale. So Stephanie's birthday sale started on Friday the 29th. And the first prompt for that was stitch something related to the letter S. So you saw a stitching shelf with artwork by Aimee Stewart. So that's what I used for that. Yesterday, Saturday, was to work on something with jewel tones. And I opted to work on, let me get the pattern out. Joan Elliott's Winter Fairy, and I'm also using this for the Flash Challenge this weekend in Magical Stitches. That's to stitch on something winter themed, which obviously this is. And I was really happy to have the opportunity to work on this because it meant that I was going to get it out this year, and I really didn't have it slotted in for anything else. So yeah, very happy to do that. So I worked on that yesterday for jewel tones because, I mean, it does have like amethyst in it, but also diamonds and pearls. Stephanie said pearls would count in her latest video. And then I also worked on it this morning, which is for today's prompt, Sunday's prompt, to stitch on something related to nature that had flora or fauna. And this has little bunnies in it, as well as all of the holly. There's holly in her, the wreath on her head, and holly leaves in the sash cape thingy that she's got going there. So I loved working on this. It was, yeah, so much fun. And here is where she is. So I added in this part of her wing. I finished up more. There was a few places in here in the green and the red that I needed to add. I did a little bit of back stitching. I came down and I added the hair here, and I added her shoulder. So loving how this is coming out. I'm stitching this with the called for DMC and Kreinick and so on and so forth on a hand dye from Color and Cotton. It's the July 2017, I believe it is. It's an unnamed color, but I love it for the lavenders and blues and grays in it. That's pretty true. It's maybe showing a little bit more mottled than it is in real life, but yeah, really happy with that, and kind of sorry to see it go away again. If I can find another excuse to work on it this year, I will take it. Just a super fun stitch, and I love the fact that it's kind of a nice balance between, you know, blocks of color and then some sort of ninja stitches, so you can kind of switch back and forth. So that is those two. And then let's see, today I'm going to be working on, I did not bring it up, but I'm going to be putting the last few stitches in to reach one of my extra credit for this month, as well as tomorrow's prompt, which is Monday the 1st, for imagination, anything that's related to fantasy or literature. So I'm going to be working on stargazers, so I'll show you that next time. Then there will be prompts for Tuesday, which is to work on something fancy, fancy lady or fancy floss or any of those good things. Wednesday will be something sparkly, so either an iridescent fabric, opalescent fabric, or Kreinick or beads, anything like that. And then Thursday will be focused on a finish. So I don't know for sure what I'm going to use for Tuesday and Wednesday yet. It's going to kind of depend on the homework. Thursday, for the focus on a finish, I'm going to actually finish the little pins and needles ornament, and I'll have to insert a picture next time to show you what that looks like finished, because it's going to be the thing that I use to do in the swap at Stitch Shenanigans. Woohoo! In 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks. I'm really excited. I'm really looking forward to that retreat. I'm looking forward to meeting folks in person and just having like a long weekend of hanging out with people, with my people. So yeah, I'll share that. I'll share an image of that next time I talk to you guys. My next podcast will be a little bit late because I would normally be recording it the weekend while I'm there, and I'm sure I'm going to need to get home and get myself organized before I'm ready to do another podcast. So it'll be 2 weeks plus a couple of days most likely next time. So anyway, so that gets us finished up on Stephanie's birthday sal. I'm definitely going to also participate in Jessie Marie's birthday sal that she just announced this morning. That will be at the end of the month. I have an idea what I want to stitch for that, but I'll talk about that then. Let's see, is there anything else that I missed? Yes, so going forward, some plans. So I am going to be at the Stitch Shenanigans retreat, hosted by McKenna over in Chandler, Arizona, not next weekend, but the weekend after. I think it's going to be a blast. I wanted to just note here that if you're going and you're somebody who wants to learn to knit, yes, I know it's not stitching, or you need some help with a knitting project, please let me know, because we're going to have a little breakout session and we're going to get Michelle Bendy Stitchy cast on to actually knit something as opposed to just buying yarn from me and looking at it. And so I'm happy to teach anybody who wants to learn how to knit, or if you are already a knitter but have a question on something and would like some help, since I teach knitting for a living, I would be glad to spend some time with you and get you hooked up with that. So just tossing that out, not a requirement because it's a stitching retreat, and I know we'll be having plenty of fun and lots of other time to do things. So we'll just see what the weekend brings. So let's move on to plans. The first thing I wanted to just address really quickly was a question I had from Leah Noel, who's the Aviatrix Stitcher. I had mentioned kind of offhandedly in my last video that I was trying to be good and not purchase very much and get some money for Stitch from Stash kind of in my budget. And I said I was saving up for something, and she said, oh, we'd love to know what that is. I'm sorry, we're having dog dreams. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but we're running in place, probably from scary pit bulls. Anyway, so she said, oh, well, what are you saving up for? And so I said, well, gee, it might be another chatelaine. So yes, indeed. I know I am not even halfway done Desert Mandala. That's okay. I am very excited that I'm going to Scotland in May for our anniversary, and so I decided that I'm going to treat myself to the floss and bead pack from European Cross Stitch for the Scotland mandala. Now I already have the pattern. I've had the pattern for quite a while, sitting in stash. I love it. I love the center. I love the little sheep. I love the sheep dogs. I love the Highland cattle. I love all of it. Yeah, so that is what I will be budgeting for. I also already have fabric for it, which is 28 count Arctic. It's a Lugana from Picture This Plus, which I think this will look great on. It's interesting, but not too wild. I like it because it's kind of stony gray, which reminds me of the rocks and the sky a lot of the time. So this is in the forecast. We'll see how I do on my budget, but that's kind of my carrot to keep myself focused on getting stuff finished and moving ahead and all of that. Quick stash enhancement moment. I got my color and cotton hand-dyed threads from the Primitives Club. I just get 3 because that kind of keeps it down to a dull roar. But I love these, and I'm using them for so many other projects this year. I've really been glad that I've been getting them. That's better. So this is Creme Brulee. This is Mars. And this is Marsh. It's greenier than it's showing up here, but it's kind of like a gray-green. Taupey green. So those came this week, which I, like I said, am excited about, and I know I will have places to use them. And then I guess we will actually talk about plans, which I have promised y'all and wandered off into the rabbit hole that is me. What am I going to be stitching on? A lot of it, I don't know. That's the short answer. We'll see what Magical Stitches tells me I should stitch for homework. What I am stitching on today, and we'll work on to put 500 stitches in. This is an extra credit prompt to stitch on something that was a reproduction sampler or published before 1990. And this was really hard for me because I don't really have any reproduction samplers. I'm trying not to start anything this year. And I don't have a lot of stuff. I don't have anything that was published before 1990 in terms of like contemporary patterns. So I asked when the extra credit first came out if it would be okay if I used my Bayou Tapestry reproduction project. So that was signed off on, and you guys may or may not remember this, but this is Harold, King Harold, from the BayouBroderie.com site. She sells reproduction kits, and these are not actually cross stitch, although they are obviously still needlework. It's a type of laid work, and I had started this. I was gifted this as a Christmas gift, not this Christmas, but last Christmas, from my nephews and sister and brother-in-law. They picked it up for me when they were overseas on one of their family trips. And so it's a little bit different technique, and the counting is problematic because it's not, the stitches are totally different, we'll just say that. But I'm counting them as specialty stitches, so every 2 legs, 2 stitches basically equals 1 cross, so I'm counting that as 1 stitch. So I started on this a little bit this morning, and you know, it goes pretty quickly. So I had done basically that much, and I've done this morning. This is kind of a 3-step process. It's being worked on the linen that came with the kit, as well as with the wool thread that came with the kit, which is dyed in colors that match the existent tapestry. So the process by which you work this stitch is you work long, very long, straight stitches basically, and then you go back in and you put in a couching line, a couched line of thread over those long stitches to hold them in place. And these kind of fold lines that you see will have either back stitch or stem stitch added to them. For the ones I did on his hand, which I have added today, I opted to go with just the back stitch because there's not a lot of not a lot of space between the lines, and it was looking too thick. Whereas I did stem stitch along here, and I don't know if it's exactly historically accurate, although the videos that I've watched show both back stitch and stem stitch. The video that you can watch from her website has you do the outline first and then fill in. But I watched a really great tutorial from a lady in the UK who does it the opposite direction. So she does the stitches inside and then goes in and stem stitches it, which made better sense to me because, as she said, you know, you follow the line of, you know, where it's marked, the cartoon of the outline. But then if you're trying to if you put the stem stitch in first and you're trying to fill in around it, it winds up, you sometimes split this dark line and it looks odd. Whereas if you put that on over top, it keeps the line nice and even. So yeah, you have to be, I mean, you can see I'm being pretty careful here with where I'm putting the ending and starting points of these longer stitches, but they will be covered with the stem stitch or back stitch when I'm finished. So I'm just gonna work on this. This is only like, I think I only added technically 130 stitches, even though I covered like all of this. But I am gonna work on that. If I don't get the 500 stitches done today, I'll get it done as we go along. So I'm thrilled because it gives me an opportunity to work on this, and I wasn't sure when it was going to get slotted in, and it does go pretty quickly. You can see from this that like his face isn't stitched and the horse's mane is not. It just has the like outline stitches around it. One thing I'm a little bit confused about, and this is just me rambling at this point, but okay, to me this looks green and this looks almost black blue. Right? So it would seem to me that, and on the pattern it says that this section, the horse's body, is worked in dark green. Now I have 2 bundles of thread. I have this bundle, which has a lot of dark green in it, don't get me wrong. And I have this bundle that has the blues in it. But this is a lot of navy blue if all I'm doing is like these hooves and a couple of strands in his tail. That's the only place I can see that's on this example is actually blue, and I have all of this. So I mean, the amount that they're showing here will take like 3 strands total, and I have probably 35 to 40 strands in here. So you might notice on mine what I had done for these outlines is I actually have been using the blue for those, like for the major outlines. So I think what I'm gonna do, I don't know if this is right or wrong or whatever, but I have a lot of that blue. I think what I'm gonna do is, even though this looks green to me, that matches the horse, I think I'm gonna do the main outlines of things. So like this line that comes down here and the line that's on the exterior of this sleeve in the navy blue, like I have started. And then I'm gonna do the folds, like the subtler parts, in green. And I haven't decided yet, I'll probably do his face in green, but I'm gonna leave that kind of till the end, I think. So if anybody has any reasons they can think of why I shouldn't do it that way, please sing out, because maybe I've just missed something totally obvious, but I guess we'll find out. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much yardage I should think the horse takes. I'm probably going to do the horse next. Like I'll finish this little bit of his here and here. I'll finish that in the yellow, and then I'll probably start on the horse just to see how fast I'm eating through the green that's included in here. I mean, I do have a lot of it, but this is a lot of space to cover. So anyway, that's what I'm working on today. I will be back to talk to you with other stuff and hopefully have taken better notes next time I talk to you, but we'll find out. We always do, right? It's fun and exciting. So at 56 minutes, I think that's plenty today. I hope that you guys have had a good month of March. I'm looking forward to spring being here. It's still snowing outside after I've talked for almost an hour, just so y'all know. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to meeting everybody at Stitch Nanigans. That should be a lot of fun. I, of course, will have stuff to report on from that when I talk to you next. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you're a new visitor, hello and welcome. If you are a returning viewer and subscriber, thank you so much for choosing to spend some time with me and all of your likes and thumbs up and interaction and all that good stuff. I always enjoy interacting with you here on YouTube. And so I think that's it for me today. Everybody stay well, and I will look forward to talking to you again in April. Take care.